As we talked earlier, a lot of processing occurs in the retina, and the retina sends processed information to the central nervous system, via ganglion cells. But retina has 4 subtypes of ganglionic cells divided based on their anatomy, distribution in the retina, and the type of information they carry. The first type is called melanopsin-containing ganglion cells. These cells are usually not connected to bipolar cells and photoreceptors. Instead, melanopsin-containing ganglion are able to detect light on their own. That is due to special light-detecting molecules they have which called melanopsin, which is melanin-based in structure, in contrast to the structures in photoreceptors, which are vitamin A-based. The second type is called X-type cells. These cells are usually small in size, and have narrow distributed dendrites, and each cell is connected to very little number of bipolar cells, no much convergence in the information they get. This means that each of these cells is responsible for a small area of the retina, which makes them have high-resolution sensory information. These cells are numerous in the central areas of the retina, and they are responsible for high-resolution detailed vision. In addition, since these usually receive information started in the cones, these cells are also responsible for colored vision. The third type is called Y cells. In contrast to X cells, Y ganglion cells are large in size with large axons and widely distributed dendrites. These cells are more prominent on the periphery part of the retina, and they are connected to rods. Usually, each Y cell is connected to many bipolar cells, a lot of convergence, which lead to low sensory resolution and less visual acuity. But due to widespread dendrites and large axons, they help in detecting moving objects and can carry that information quickly to the central nervous system. The fourth type is called W cells. This type of ganglionic cells has various anatomy, but most of them are similar to Y cells in anatomy, that's large cells with widely distributed dendrites, and usually found in the peripheral part of the retina. But they are usually connected to macron cells, not to bipolar cells, which make them very sensitive and able to not only detect movement, but some of them will only fire action potential if an object moved in only one certain direction but not the other. Now, once the information reaches the various types of ganglionic cells, it will be carried to the central nervous system, where it will have many destination and targets of the central nervous system. Like all sensations, the main target will be the cortex to get conscious part of the visual sensation. Both the X and Y types of ganglionic cells travel in this pathway. And like other sensations, this pathway will stop first in the thalamus in a nucleus called lateral geniculate nucleus of the thalamus. Later it will project to the area of the cortex responsible of receiving visual information, which called primary visual cortex. We will describe this pathway in details in the lecture room. In addition to the cortex, the visual information will be sent to 3 subcortical destinations, and will be associated with involuntarily and unconscious processes related to vision. The first destination will be the hypothalamus. This is carried by a pathway called retinohypothalamic pathway. This pathway is formed by the melanopsin-containing ganglion cells, and in this target, it helps regulate the body's circadian and seasonal rhythms, by sending the changes of light information to the hypothalamus, and help it forming the body internal clock. All circadian rhythms or seasonal changes of body functions such as changes and cycles of hormones secretions you have learned earlier in the endocrine course are due to this center and pathway. And the more obvious process that is under the regulation of this pathway is sleep, as we will see when we will talk about sleep in later lecture. Since this pathway relay on the melanopsin-containing ganglion cells, it will not be affected by disorders that target photoreceptors such as macular degeneration or retinitis pigmentosa. While, on the other hand, lesions that cause general cell damage to the retina such as vascular lesions in the retina or glaucoma, will affect this pathway and have an impact on circadian rhythms of the body. The second destination is an area in the midbrain called Pretectum. This pathway is the one responsible about what called pupillary light reflex, in that the pupil of the eyes constrict when the eye is exposed to light, and the amount of constriction increase as the intensity of light increase. This pathway forms the afferent fibers of the papillary light reflex. It carries the stimulation of the retina and the information regarding the intensity of light that falls on the retina to area in brain stem, specifically in the midbrain part of the brain stem called olivary pretectal nucleus. The neurons in the olivary pretectal nucleus travel and target the Edinger-Westphal nucleus at both sides. This is a parasympathetic nucleus that, as described earlier, sends fibers through the oculomotor nerves of both sides to synapse in the two ciliary ganglia, which have postsynaptic fibers that innervate the constrictor muscles of the eyes. Hence, the more intense light fall on the retina, this pathway have higher firing rates, which lead to more constricted pupil. Here is a section show the Edinger-Westphal nucleus and the level of the nucleus in the midbrain. The third destination is another area that also part of the midbrain called superior colliculus. The superior colliculus is a multilayer nucleus that has several functions that can be summarized and simplified as 1. Helps and control eyes movements and mediates some visual reflexes. 2. Mediate motor reflexes that controlling orientation of the head, eyes, and body to visual or auditory stimuli. 3. Help and give us orientation and direct our behaviors towards specific points in space or specific object. Since this pathway is all about movements and direction, it's formed mainly by the axons of the W type of ganglionic cells and some of the Y types also. Like many subcortical parts of the brain that must send the information to the cortex. The superior colliculus will project eventually to the cortex, but it will not project to the primary visual cortex. Instead, the information from superior colliculus will project to cortical areas that are responsible for the perception of movement and directions found, such as the insular cortex or posterior parietal cortices like area 5 and 7. Also, in their pathway to the cortex they still will synapses in the thalamus. Like any fibers go to the cortex, the nucleus that these fiber synapses at is called the pulvinar nucleus, which is the same nucleus also of the vestibular pathway. This pathway is responsible phenomena called blind sight. Blind sight is the ability of people who are blind due to damage of the primary visual respond and detect visual stimuli even though they do not consciously see. These patients can still guide hand movements towards an object even though they cannot see what they are reaching for, and has the ability to kind of see visual features, such as edges and moving objects, but cannot gain a holistic visual percept. If you like to see more about this phenomena, there are plenty of articles and videos you can find online, but a good suggestion is a video on the link in the description part of this video.